Have you ever had a moment where everything just flowed, where your mind was quiet, your actions were effortless, and time just seemed to stretch or disappear, where leading, thinking, or creating felt less like effort and more like rhythm, as if something larger was moving through you? Now, imagine if leadership could feel like that more often. If instead of pushing, controlling, and forcing, you could lead from a place of deep presence, a state where ego steps aside and awareness takes over. That's what this episode is about. The flow state of leadership, where action and awareness become one, where purpose replaces pressure, and where true creativity and wisdom emerge. Stay with me until the end, because we will explore the psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy behind flow. And I'll share, as usual, the H2H experiment of the week to help you train your mind to enter that state more often. Let's start talking a little bit about the myth of effort and why leaders overthink and overcontrol. Most leaders, they are addicted to control. We equate effort with effectiveness. The harder we push, the more we believe we're achieving. But in reality, excessive control kills creativity, intuition, and adaptability. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the psychologist who coined the term flow, described it as a state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. In flow, there's no overthinking, no anxiety about outcomes, no self-consciousness, because the self momentarily dissolves. The ego, that constant narrator analyzing and judging, finally goes silent. That's why some of your best ideas come when you're showering, driving, or walking alone. The mind finally relaxes, and deeper intelligence within you finally has space to speak. So, the real question is, how can leaders who live in a world of constant noise and responsibility learn to enter that silence on purpose, intentionally? Now, let's take a look from the neuroscience perspective. When you enter flow, something extraordinary happens in your brain. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for planning, self-monitoring, and worrying, temporarily quiets down. Neuroscientists call this transient hypofrontality. It's as if the brain says, "You've prepared enough, let me take you from here." Meanwhile, dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins, all those good hormones, they just flood your system, sharpening focus, increasing creativity, and dissolving the boundaries between self and action. That's why athletes, musicians, and artists describe flow as losing themselves and finding something greater in return. For leaders, the same principle applies. When you're fully present, you make faster decisions with more clarity, empathy, and intuition. Because in flow, the body and mind, they synchronize. Logic and emotion start working together instead of competing. Thor Norentrenes, in The User Illusion, beautifully explains this phenomenon. He argues that consciousness is only a small part of what we truly are, a fraction of the immense unconscious intelligence constantly at work. We believe we are consciously in control, but most of our actions and insights arise from the subconscious layers of our mind, a space of immense, silent processing power. Flow, in this sense, is when that unconscious brilliance takes the lead. Daniel Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow echoes this concept. He calls it the dance between System 1, fast, intuitive, and automatic, and System 2, slow, deliberate, analytical. When we practice something long enough, mastery transfers from System 2 to System 1. The conscious mind lets go, and the unconscious takes over, executing with grace and precision. In flow, that's exactly what happens. Years of practice converge into instinct. The brain stops second-guessing itself and becomes a channel for expression, wisdom, and timing. In a way, flow is the highest form of intelligence, where preparation meets surrender. Now we put on the table again the ego. The ego problem that we face is the mind that tries too hard very often. The greatest obstacle to flow is not distraction, it's ego. The ego wants to control outcomes, prove worth, and manage perception. It constantly asks, how am I doing? What are others thinking of me? Even in the middle of doing something. That inner commentary keeps us out of flow because it separates the doer from the doing. It's the difference between playing music and thinking about how well you're playing music. In leadership, this looks like self-conscious overperformance, managing appearances instead of leading from authenticity. It's the same trap as the mask we explored before, the desire to look competent instead of simply being present. Flow begins the moment the ego lets go of control. When you're no longer the actor trying to manipulate the play, but the channel through which the play unfolds. As Alan Watts wisely said, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. When the ego relaxes, clarity returns. Now, let's put a little bit of sparkle of philosophy in the middle. Centuries before modern psychology, the Taoist sages described a concept called Wu Wei, which means non-doing or effortless action. It doesn't mean laziness or passivity. It means acting in harmony with the natural flow of life. When water flows around a rock, it doesn't resist, it adapts. The leader in flow does the same. They don't force creativity, they allow it. They don't dominate people, they guide energy. And this is leadership as presence in motion, where intuition replaces rigidity and trust replaces fear. When you lead from flow, you don't lose control. You transcend the need for it. Because the more you trust the current, the more powerful your direction becomes. Lao Tzu described this thousands of years ago in the Tao Te Ching. The master does nothing, yet leaves nothing undone. Wu Wei isn't inaction, it's mastery without interference. The same applies to leadership. When you stop trying to control every wave, the tide itself begins to carry you along. But then you might be wondering, okay, it sounds very nice, but how do I access it? How do I get to this flow state? Flow doesn't just happen by accident. It emerges when certain conditions align. Csikszentmihalyi identified three core ingredients. 1. Clarity of goals, knowing what you're trying to achieve. 2. Balance between challenge and skill, enough difficulty to stretch you, but not enough to overwhelm you. And 3. Immediate feedback, being able to sense, feel, or see progress in real time. But there is a fourth condition, one that the ancients and mystics understood long before science did: presence. You cannot access flow if your mind is in the past or in the future. You must be fully here, in the present, fully alive in the moment. Presence is not something you try to achieve. It's what remains when you simply stop trying. That's why mindfulness practices, once dismissed as spiritual luxuries, are now recognized as strategic leadership tools. As Eckhart Tolle says in The Power of Now, realize deeply that the present moment is all you ever have. Flow is not about escaping life, it's about entering it completely. A leader in flow doesn't push people, they pull them through alignment. They inspire, not by instruction, but by vibration. Their calmness becomes contagious, their focus magnetic, their clarity grounding. When a team enters collective flow, ego simply dissolves at scale. Titles, hierarchy, and politics fade. That's what's left is pure collaboration. And that's when creativity spikes, trust deepens, and performance accelerates naturally. Because flow, ultimately, is collective coherence. When individual awareness harmonizes with the group, work becomes art. Harvard research into high-performing teams shows that the best results emerge not from pressure, but from psychological safety. The feeling that one can take risks without fear. And that safety only exists when leaders themselves are centered, authentic, and aware. When they lead from presence, not from ego. In that space, leadership is no longer about control. It's about communion. All right, now let's move to the H2H experiment of the week. This week, I want you to practice a technique I call flow triggering. It's a 3-step method to help you re-enter presence when your mind drifts or your ego takes over. First, pause and breathe. When you feel tension or over-control creeping in, take a slow, conscious breath. Feel your body again. This grounds you in the moment. You can also use your senses to ground. Refocus on the task. This is step number 2. Ask yourself, what is the very next action right now? Don't think about results, just the next move, just the next thing that you have to do. And 3, surrender to the process. Silently say, I trust this moment, I am present. Then allow your attention to merge with the action. Try this several times a day, before meetings, before big decisions, before difficult conversations. You will notice the mental noise fade, the body relaxes, and insight arises naturally. And that's flow, not a mystical state, but a practiced way of being. All right, now let's wrap up. The flow state is not just for athletes or artists. It's the natural rhythm of life. It's what happens when the ego stops striving and the self starts guiding. True leadership is not about doing more. It's about being more fully here in the moment, in the present. Because when you are in flow, you're not leading from control. You're leading with consciousness. As Jung said, in all chaos, there is a cosmos. In all disorder, a secret order. Flow is that secret order, and presence is the doorway to it. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of the H2H experiment. I hope it has been useful to you. If you'd like to explore more reflections like this, visit me on LinkedIn, the ECXO platform, or YouTube. And check out also my books on Amazon, where I go deeper into consciousness, leadership, and the human experience as a whole. Until next time, stay aware, stay kind, and stay in flow. Bye.